From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
What it is, good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. It's an awesome day today, 2/22/22, or 22/2/22, however you name it. We've got 5 twos, so it's 5 of a kind, right, if that's a thing. But good morning. Welcome to a awesome show today. A lot going on in the world of cybersecurity, a lot of geopolitical stuff are starting to have a downstream impact on cyber. We're going to be talking about that on today's show. But before we do, a shout out to our show supporter, Know Before. Please check them out. You can see more about them in the show notes. We've got a lot going on. Russia in the Ukraine. We're going to talk about that as well, folks, because we've got a really busy show. Russia got into the Ukraine. We've got an SQL backdoor now. We've got a new phishing campaign in the UK that's significant. Iran and China all on the move today. So before we do that, though, some shout outs to Eddie. Good morning from Dallas, Texas. Good morning to David B. Brent, good morning to you. George, good morning, folks. And Scott, good morning to you as well. Thank you all for being here. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and your favorite podcast listening platform, Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. You can find our CyberHub podcast there, so go and check it out. Now, before we get into today's show, a ceremonial cup of coffee together. My double espresso here has been sitting for about 6 minutes cooling down. 6 minutes too long, personally, but coffee cup, cheers. All right, let's get into today's show. We've got a lot going on. CyberHubPodcast.com. Go check it out. A new backdoor for unpatched Microsoft SQL database servers is getting hit with Cobalt strike. So vulnerable internet-facing SQL servers are being targeted by threat actors as part of a new campaign to deploy the Cobalt strike adversary simulation tool on compromised hosts. Now, why Cobalt strike? 1, so it's used by most pen testers, so it doesn't trigger anything. All right. Number 2, doesn't trigger anything. Attacks that target SQL servers include attacks to environment where the vulnerability has not been patched, brute forcing, and dictionary attack against poorly managed servers. Cobalt is a commercial, fully featured pen testing framework that allows an attacker to deploy an agent named Beacon on the victim machine. Intrusions observed involve the unidentified actor scanning port 1433 to check for exposed Microsoft SQL servers to perform brute force or dictionary attacks against the system administrator attack. That's not to say that the servers are not left accessible over the internet aren't vulnerable. What the threat actor behind Lemon Duck's malware is scanning the same port to laterally move across the network. Once they gain a foothold, the next phase of the attack works on spawning a Windows command shell via the Microsoft SQL process to download the next stage payload that houses the encoded Cobalt strike binary onto the system. And so if you have not patched your SQL servers, please make sure you get those done today and as soon as possible. China, again, on the move. They've now been linked to a month-long attack on the Taiwanese financial sector. APT-10, which is linked to the Chinese espionage group, is now being linked to attack on the local financial sector. The attacks are believed to have started towards the end of November of 2021 and are still taking place this month, according to a report shared with The Record. The company attributed the intrusions, which it tracked under the codename of Operation Cash Panda, to a well-known Chinese cyber espionage group known in the industry as APT-10. Investigations into the November 2021 attacks missed the part where hackers exploited the software vulnerability and only saw a credential stuffing attack used as a cover and as a way to get some access to some trading accounts, which they used to execute large transactions on the Hong Kong stock market. The attackers then used a technique called reflective code loading to run malicious code on local systems and install versions of the Quasar RAT that gave the attackers persistence and remote access to the infected system using reverse RDP tunnels. Further investigation showed that what was initially presumed to be two separate waves of cyber attacks was actually one prolonged attack campaign in which the attacker leveraged advanced obfuscation techniques and not previously observed. The objective of the attack does not appear to have been financial gain, but rather the exfil of brokerage information, PII data, and the disruption of investments during a periodic of economic growth towards Taiwan. So no surprise there with the attack by China, but it just lets you know also like their TTPs now, right? It's very, very crystal clear. So we know that they're going to launch an attack to distract us to go after something else. Remember the good old DDoS attack? I'm going to overwhelm you with traffic, and while everyone's running this way, I'm going to come in and I'm going to exfil data the other way. Well, now we're starting to see that with credential stuffing and so many other aspects of it, where we're being targeted specifically with a multiple different series of events that may not have anything to do with each other for us, but for the attacker, they do. They're kind of different triggers to get you to chase something in a different corner. And that's why you've really got to have a holistic look at your security program, your SIM, your SOC analysts, your SOC managers, your security operation people. They've all got to have their head on a swivel going, how do these two come together? What are the tools that are there? Using the MITRE attack framework, looking at the different TTPs that are out there, having good partners with your security partners is critical to have your head on a swivel so that you can constantly be able to defend yourself from these types of sophisticated attacks that China and Russia absolutely launch and are well known for. SolarWinds is one of those, and this is another one. If you think what they're doing in Taiwan is just for Taiwan, I think we're going to wait a month or 2 or 3, and we'll see this also in specific countries in Europe and in North America. It's critical. A new phishing campaign is targeting the Monzo online banking customer. Monzo, an all-digital online banking platform in the UK, which has over 4 million customers, and it's challenging the traditional financial management system, is offering almost a pretty decent experience for a lot of their clients. However, now they're being targeted by phishing scams, where they're getting text messages to verify, to account verify, where they're hoping to get account takeover of that. So credential stuffing and so much more. That's why, financial organizations, if you don't have two-factor authentication, if you're not using multiple factors to lock someone in, these types of attacks will compromise your customers and someone ends up eating the loss. And that's typically always the financial organizations. So something to keep in mind is two-factor all the time. Two-factor. It's critical. We'll move to the UK, which is now alluding to a retaliatory cyber attack on Russia. The UK government alluded yesterday that it might launch an offensive cyber operation against Russia if the Kremlin attacks the UK computer system after their invasion of Ukraine. This was pre-invasion. All right, this was pre-invasion when this came out. Now we know that Russia has gone in with a peacekeeping mission into the Ukraine to free the Russian-speaking Ukrainians in eastern Ukraine, who have essentially been there since 2014 as part of the Crimea offensive early on. Let's not forget that Russia shot down a airliner out of the sky. Malaysian Airlines had a really bad year in 2013 and 14. They lost one jet, MH370, out there somewhere in the middle of the ocean, and then MH17 from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was shot down out of the sky by Russia. So you can understand the uneasiness of this one. Now the UK is saying that if there at any point period in time Russia thinks of attacking the UK with a cyber attack, given the current geopolitical climate, that it would be a dereliction of duty if the UK didn't have offensive cyber capability at its disposal and executed them. Ben Wallace, who's the Secretary of Defense for the UK, said this yesterday in a meeting with the UK Parliament's House of Commons. And you can see Russians are looking at this and taking it a bit with we'll see if they actually do that. I don't think Russia would be foolish enough to go down that path of attacking the UK with a cyber attack at this time. But don't let someone who's a Russian adversary plan a false flag cyber attack in order to get the wrath of the Brits on the Russians as well. And our final story of the day ends with the Iranian state broadcaster that was clobbered by a clumsy Buggy code. So researchers said that the January 27th attack that aired footage of opposition leaders calling for the assassination of Iran's supreme leader was a clumsy and unsophisticated wiper attack. Footage of opposition leaders calling for the assassination of Iran's supreme leader ran on several of the nation's state-run TV channels late in January. This was psychological warfare. The attack itself was unsophisticated, but the reason I wanted to bring up this story is because of the style of attack that this was. The style of an attack that was used against the Iranian here was psychological in nature. Russia did something very similar last week against the Ukrainian. They attacked their banks, the Department of Defense, and the military websites because that was psychological in nature, letting people know, like, we took down their websites. Imagine what we would do if we invaded you. Don't resist Russia. It's not worth it for you. On the other hand, now we're seeing what happened with Iran was a reverse psychological warfare using opposition leaders who are against the current regime in Iran. To do that, it was an unsophisticated attack. It was an attack that was really, really simple in nature, but Iran couldn't stop it, right? And this aired, and then the TV network went offline. And so much more of that there. So, folks, that's it for our practitioner brief here today. Keep your eyes out on these unsophisticated attacks, these geopolitical attacks that we're seeing now before I end, right? These geopolitical attacks that we're seeing now, they're eventually going to translate downstream to our organizations and our lives. So what we're watching now is just a preview into how the cyber warfare and cyber capabilities is going to develop and attack the private market, unless there's a better private-public partnership, unless there's some level of agreement, which is never going to be reached because people look at the cyber warfare as a wild, wild west at the moment, and until we see something greater, it's going to be very, very difficult to see how this stops. So defense in depth, situational awareness, know who you're working with, who you're working for, and what could possibly be coming your way. And then harden, and don't dismiss anything that you see as just a coincidence. There aren't any in cybersecurity. Folks, that's it for me here today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Won't be a cool date like today. Today, 2/2/22. So enjoy your 5 2s today. They all make a 10, which is a prime number, I believe. So with that being said, have a great rest of your day and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.